Welcome to a special breaking news episode of 40s and Free Agents. I am here, Greg Rosenthal, with my friend Daniel Jeremiah, just minutes after one of the biggest trades in NFL history. We can call it that. Micah Parsons is going to the Green Bay Packers in exchange for 2 first-round picks and veteran Kenny Clark. On top of that, he signed a 4-year, $188 million contract with $136 million guaranteed. It is good to be Micah Parsons, and it is good to be Daniel Jeremiah, who gets to do a breaking news podcast with yours truly. This is going to be fun. Like, what was your first reaction? Where were you when you saw this?
Yeah, I just got back from lunch and I was in the family room and I got on my phone. This is the scale I will use for how big of a story it is. It was an @RapSheet tweet and I did a triple. It was a triple check of, am I getting fooled here? I don't want to retweet this. If this is not authentic. And it was like, oh yeah, this really happened. So that was my first reaction. My second reaction was, I was on an interview yesterday and was asked about this. And I said, I kind of perked up a little bit when they asked Brian Gutekunst at the press conference yesterday about it. I'm fluent in GM. I speak fluent GM. I know exactly how they handle and answer every single question. And it's all right out of a playbook. And anytime anybody ever asks you about a player on another team or opportunity or potential trade, the stock GM answer you get every single time is, you know what, I'm not gonna comment on any other players. Worried about the guys we have in our room. Blah 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 blah. That's standard stock answer. You never give it any light whatsoever. And he said, and he's quoted even I think before this what we saw yesterday, which was, hey, if we have an opportunity, we're willing to part with picks and we're willing to. And I'm like, that is far from what the normal answer is in that situation. And my ears perked up a little bit.
Well, they were right to perk up because Ian Rappaport, who, put the news out, said that the terms of the deal, I believe, between Parsons and the Packers were done 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. And I think they were figuring out the compensation in the meantime. I ultimately think it's bad business to trade a player that I believe is the best pure pass rusher of the last 20 years to enter the league. You could make an argument for Von Miller or Myles Garrett, and that's fine. But just in terms of came into the league and was immediately a complete difference maker as a pass rusher, he finished second in Defensive Player of the Year, not Rookie of the Year, Player of the Year as a rookie, and has maintained that high level for 3 seasons. I would say last season was a little bit of a step back for him, wasn't 100% healthy. I think it is bad business not to just get the deal done with Micah Parsons and avoid all that. Because if you think about it, DJ, the Packers were not only willing to give him that contract, he was worth enough to give him that contract and 2 first-round picks. So I think that says something about the type of player that he is. And I think it's bad business for the Cowboys, but for the Packers, we've been asking for them to add a little more juice. This is a little more juice. This is a lot more juice.
There's so many different angles to hit this on. So I guess I'll try and narrow my thoughts. So let's do Packers, and then we'll get to Cowboys. So I'll start on the Packers side of things. I always talk to guys in the personnel departments and leadership when we get to the off season, whether it's at all-star games, combine, phone calls before the draft. What are your team needs? What are you looking for? Kind of where you are in your process. And the thing I got from the Packers was, we love all the talent we have on defense. We have a lot of young guys. We've invested a lot of high picks in front 7 players. We think we've got some really, really good football players. We don't know that we have that blue level player, which we call like a blue chip guy who's, that's the highest of the high, somebody who's a top 3 to 5 player at their position in the league. They felt like they had a lot of guys kind of in that their top 10 to 15 players at their position. We don't have a top 3 to 5 guy at his position. And we don't have a player that we felt if we go into a big game that the opponent is circling and going, we have to game plan and scheme around this player. So we really want to get an impact player. We really want a blue level player. And their thing to me was, our hope is that some of our existing guys can maybe evolve into that and be those guys, but we have to be real with ourselves that they're not there at this point in time. So this clearly checks that box. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I'm a huge believer in understanding your windows and understanding what phase are you in right now. Is this Is this a, hey, we're trying to get from okay to good phase? Like, let's be a little bit smart and savvy with our moves. Is this a little bit of a tear down? Hey, we got to go down to go back up. Or is this, we're this close, Greg, and let's be bold and let's be aggressive and let's go for it. And I feel like with Jordan Love where he is in his ascension, with a system and coaching staff offensively that's in place, they're looking at all these young defensive players and they said it's go time. And I love that because I think that's I think that was a proper identification of where their team is.
I think that's absolutely right. And a peek behind the curtain for the listeners wondering why are we doing the breaking news episode? Look, we taped a couple episodes earlier today. You're going to hear 40s of free agents where we draft who could be the Super Bowl champion. Well, that was blown up. So we had to get together to fix that. Well, we might as well just do the breaking news. And one of the points I thought that you made a good point about the Packers, when you saw them spend money on Aaron Banks, an interior lineman, like that was a move that teams make when they think they're really close. Well, this is like another level to the Aaron Banks move. And I love it. I do love it because now Rashawn Gary is their second. Like they still have talented players up front, but now Rashawn Gary is in a more supplementary role. Lucas Van Ness, who they like, and he can be the number 3 guy there. Like it helps out the guys on the interior and Devontae Wyatt. So there's a lot of people that are helped out by this trade.
All right. Can I give Eric homework, by the way?
That's our producer. Yes.
Am I allowed to give producer Eric homework? Just by the time we end, this little conversation, can we get Micah Parsons' career numbers against the Philadelphia Eagles? I'd be curious about that because this also does feel like you went out and got Aaron Banks to block Jalen Carter, a team that you have to get through to get to a Super Bowl out of the NFC. Now you go out and get Micah Parsons, who's going to be extremely familiar with Philly, and obviously he's a great player, an elite player at elite position. He's going to work against any team. But as you're trying to get over the hump, and I think that everybody that's in the NFC clearly has the Philadelphia Eagles, in their sights. That's who you got to get by. That's who you got to beat. So I absolutely love it from the Green Bay side of things. In terms of the picks, two first-round picks, Kenny Clark, which I was a little surprised the Cowboys, and we'll get to them, that they didn't want an edge guy, because you're losing one, bring one in. But they do have some depth there. You're going to have him and Odigizua. Again, we'll get to the Cowboys. But I love it from the Packers standpoint. To me, I'm always going to be optimistic on picks, that they're going to be late picks. Everybody's optimistic about how the team they have and how this player is going to come in and give them a late pick. Whereas the Cowboys side of things, I like lottery tickets on bad teams. I don't like lottery tickets on really, really good teams. I'd almost rather know what I'm getting in terms of where the picks are.
Yeah, and all due respect to the players I'm mentioning, but like think of the last late first round picks for the Packers. Lucas Van Ness is one of them. Quay Walker is one of them. Devontae Wyatt is one of them. Solid players, but you're not drafting at the top of the first round, and you're not planning to be drafting at the top of the first round when you trade for Micah Parsons. So
you're not finding Micah Parsons in the late 20s. I can tell you
right.
that.
Even the fact he slipped as far as he did, good job by Dallas, but ultimately you're giving up some of that. There are historical precedents. I mean, of course you think of just like Reggie White coming to the Packers, but that's a different situation. But in terms of a trade, the terms are not crazy different to the Khalil Mack trade to the Bears back in the day, where the Raiders got 2 firsts. Now, they did send a second back and they got a third, so it's a little more complicated with Kenny Clark involved, but essentially 2 firsts was part of it. I think Parsons, like I said, is another level of player, which is hard to say than Khalil Mack, but I do think he's ultimately a first ballot Hall of Fame type of player that you need to get the most out of. And when we've been going through all this preseason talk, I haven't been that high on the Packers because my big thing was I couldn't quite get there imagining this defense run by Jeff Hafley, who I think did a good job last year, but I couldn't quite imagine this defense getting through an entire conference worth of playoff games before. And now, like, it's easier to see the vision.
How about the speed? Just look at 3 guys. Look at Micah Parsons, Edgerrin Cooper, Quay Walker. Like, first of all, Rashawn Gary, if I have to go back through, I think he ran in the high 4.5s coming out. Like, he's stupid athletic. Devontae Wyatt ran incredibly fast as someone at 300 pounds. Like, they might have the fastest front 7 in the NFL now, throwing Micah Parsons into that mix. And by the way, Eric did his homework. Parsons, and how many games against the Eagles? 7 games against the Eagles, 5 sacks, 8 quarterback hits, 6 tackles for loss. So the team that you got to go through, he's got a pretty decent track record against those guys.
It's wild. And the crazy thing is, like, that's not really out of the ordinary for his normal numbers. And yeah, I guess his back injury is fine. The second opinion on the back that was reported a day ago, it checked out. It's gonna be okay. And wow, that week 1 game against the Detroit Lions and really this whole Packers season, not that they weren't going to be in primetime already, but they are just box office. Let's get to the Cowboys side of things. If you're a Cowboys fan, it's really disappointing. This Netflix documentary is out, and you think about the glory days, and they spend a little time at the end of the documentary, DJ, looking at why they haven't been able to get back to the Super Bowl and the mistakes that they've made running the team. And I think this just gives the impression of a team that doesn't think ahead enough. Like, they could have been like the Eagles, DJ, and signed Micah Parsons to an appropriate contract a year ago, which would already look like a bargain because TJ Watt and Myles Garrett would have gone past it. But they just chose not to do that and get into this situation. And then it got really personal. And all those reports, and Jordan Rodriguez on NFL Daily talked about it too after she went to Cowboys camp, of that. This felt a little different than most holdouts because it felt like it got personal. Like, that's bad management, I think, when you have a player as talented as Micah Parsons.
Yeah, but I will also, I've mentioned this other shows before, and that going out to training camp last year when they had the 3 deals that needed to get done. And when you talk to people around the team there, and some on the coaching side that you'd talk to, as well as some people just around the team, I got very consistent feedback, which was, oh, CD Lamb will get done. Like that contract will get done. Dak's contract will get done. That's going to happen. Micah, I don't know. I don't know about Micah. I don't know. There's some people that aren't quite comfortable with him here. I wouldn't say that's a slam dunk that deal gets done. That was going back in the past. So that always kind of stuck with me that I don't know that they were ever comfortable, putting that investment in him. And obviously it has nothing to do with the player on the field, because what you've seen on the field, easily, that's an easy decision. Age, production, how his skill set should continue to age should be fine. To me, I don't know how you could look at this any other way than to say they weren't comfortable with Micah Parsons, the person making that investment. There's no other way to explain it. When you have a premier position, a premier talent who's young, who's productive, who's literally made for today's football with what he can do in his skill set, to not pay that guy, to me, has nothing to do with anything football related. That is, to me, again, I'm reading into it, but I don't know how you read into it any other way. That has to be they weren't comfortable with Micah Parsons, a person, in order to do that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you bring that up. It's a great point. I really think about the DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, like Twitter back and
Little
forth,
dust up, yeah.
Which sounds stupid. Like, it's just this stupid thing, and players, they not everyone has to get along. Okay, I get it. But DeMarcus Lawrence, in that interaction, I think gave voice to some of the things you read from unnamed sources about the Cowboys team and the locker room makeup, that maybe everyone wasn't exactly on the same page. And if you read a lot of it, it wasn't hard to read between the lines that Micah, in his maturity, maybe wasn't like, everyone didn't love Micah in that locker room. And for DeMarcus Lawrence, who to me is kind of a great example of a great Cowboy, first of all, but a great pro that everyone lauds how he approaches the game, specifically that he was the person that was kind of shading Micah Parsons publicly for how he goes about things. That was telling to me, because I think DeMarcus Lawrence is a guy who, league-wide and especially in the Cowboys building, has a ton of respect for how he approaches things. And so you're absolutely right that plays into it, and the Packers are going to have to figure out that part of the equation, and maybe that'll be a challenge long term, but I don't think it's going to be in 2025, because he's going to be ready to rip off the faces of all of his opponents, including the Packers, on September 28th. That's a good one to have on the schedule.
Can I give you one other comparison, because you mentioned the Khalil Mack one, and I haven't seen all the reaction. I've just seen the immediate reaction as we jumped on to record this, but the immediate reaction is pretty harsh on the Cowboys, as you would imagine, for not getting a deal done and signing the contract, instead moving on from a talented player like this. But I remember being in a hotel. I don't remember if it was the Senior Bowl or whatever, when the Stafford trade got done, and the immediate reaction was, Detroit is they're just giving up. They have this talented quarterback, Matthew Stafford, viewed at the time as a top 5, top 7 quarterback, as talented as anyone, and they're shipping him off, and all they're getting is Jared Goff and some draft picks. Like, they don't, the Detroit Lions are going to suck for the next decade. They clearly don't care about winning. In fact, we look at it now, and Detroit set themselves up by making good selections there. Obviously, Jared Goff hitting at the quarterback position set themselves up for a decade run. So I don't want to shovel dirt on the Cowboys yet in terms of what this can look like for them long term. But I do think, in speaking of the Packers window and recognizing they're in it and going for it, I don't know how you read into this anything other than the Cowboys feel like they're not good enough. This version's not good enough to take down the Eagles, and that they have to try and put some eggs in the basket going forward.
Wow. Yeah. I think it's
how is that debatable? How do you?
I think it's more of an ego thing, and by that I mean the ego of this battle, which got personal with Micah Parsons, that they didn't like him enough and they didn't need him and they didn't like how this negotiation went. And then the ego of, we think we can do it both ways. We think we can win this year and trade away Micah Parsons because we've got 4 good edge rushers. If there is one team that could survive losing Micah Parsons just at that position, it's the Cowboys. So to review, I mean, they're not nearly the same now, but you got Ezeraku, your guy, the first rounder.
Like him.
You got Dante Fowler, who's probably going to start for this team. It was a pretty good pass rusher for hire. He's been with the Cowboys before, was with the Commanders last year. You have Sam Williams, who tore his ACL a couple years ago, but it looked really good in training camp. He looked good a couple years ago before tearing his ACL, a young player. And you have Marshawn Nealon, who's more of a run stopper. So it's a strong position, and I guess that's why they went for Kenny Clark, because they are very thin in the defensive interior. But Kenny Clark's a declining player who didn't look right last year. The Packers, I thought, were really counting on him to rebound, but he's an aging player, and it's hard to count on a guy like that to rebound. So that is a curious part of the deal.
Yeah, I was just pulling up some numbers from last year. So for the Packers side of it, Rashawn Gary led them with 7.5 sacks. Mm-hmm. So you're adding Micah Parsons, just going to more than likely double what you had last year. You take Micah Parsons off the Cowboys, their leading sacker last year would have been at 5.5 sacks. So yeah, they've got some talent there. Some young guys I'm excited about. Those guys were hurt.
Those 3 guys, none of them were there. So
I get it. I get those guys weren't all on campus, but in terms of just in Dallas Cowboy uniforms with a star on their helmet, that's not, that's going to be difficult to replace that production, even though you've got some guys there.
Well, you know who didn't have a single sack, and I believe a quarterback hit through like the first 6 games of last season, was Kenny Clark. Like I think he went about 8 games without a sack. It was something like 6 to 8 without a quarterback hit. And yeah, he was hurt. He was playing through an injury, but they're going to need him to be better. I got to say though, because if you're listening to the 40s in free agent, you might have gotten it on the NFL daily feed. You might have moved the sticks or our own feed. We just put up in the daily feed this over under draft I did with Nick Wright, and Cowboys over 7.5 was one of my picks. It was like my 6th pick or something like that. I still think they're going to go over. I really do. I think offensively that they have enough to be a winning football team, and there's the defense is now on a razor's edge. I get it, but I do think there's some upside to that defense. So all I would say to Cowboys fans is I actually think they can be competitive this year. You do get a couple first-round picks. They, like the Lions you mentioned in that trade, and the Rams for that matter, have been pretty good at drafting, at least at the top of the draft, even if it's a late first-round pick. That's a feather in their cap. I'm just trying to think of the poor downtrodden Cowboys fans in our lives.
It is weird to have grown up a child of the 90s. That was kind of I was born in 77, so that's kind of like prime, like into football age for me, as the big bad bold Cowboys, and reeling in Charles Haley and going out and getting Deion Sanders and acquiring Joey Galloway. Like, they've always been on one side of this deal, and it's like, I don't even know who you are anymore. Like, you guys are on the selling side of this stuff. So it is what it is. It'll be fascinating to watch these two teams. But in kind of wrapping this thing up, Greg, I was looking at it. Maybe the only, I think you could say, and I've talked a lot about the Eagles here, the Eagles and the Packers, maybe those are the 2 fastest front sevens in football right now. Like, the most athletic, like young, just big time speed. And inside that division with the Green Bay Packers, think about Detroit with Gibbs and Williams, like how explosive and dynamic they are. Laporta, who can really run and like all of a sudden now the Packers, they've got some fastballs at the first and second level of their defense. It's going to be fun to watch them, man.
Yeah, the fact that they have Edgerrin Cooper back there, and
he's really good.
If Quay Walker, like if nothing else, he is a fireball, and he will be. You're talking about team speed. You're right. I don't think there are any teams that are more explosive in the front seven. I think the Vikings are very interesting and tough to prepare for, but they don't have the juice. And the Texans, they don't quite have the guys on the interior in terms of their defensive line. And man, the Packers did it. One thing I love about this too is Ted Thompson and Gutekunst. You're right. Like it's just consistently hitting those singles, hitting those doubles. We're not going to spend too much in free agency, although they have started to.
We're not going to draft a receiver in the first round. Everybody we're not. It's like that should have been our alarm clock. They're spending money in free agency. They're announcing to the world that they're taking a receiver in the drafts in Green Bay. The whole town goes nuts. I mean, this is a new Packers.
They're replacing the Cowboys as America's team. It would be fun to see.
You know a sidebar that I just thought of? I don't know if I told you this, but I was I went on a little one-day getaway with the wife, and we went up to the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Niguel for one night, and we're staying there. And I go out on the balcony, and I see just a bunch of NFL-looking players walking around. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, and then I see, they're all dressed up nice. Like, must be a wedding. And so all of a sudden I see walking down from the wedding, I see a sign, and I go, I can't quite make it out. And then I see David Mulgeta, the agent, walk right by, and he looks up at me on the balcony. I'm only on the second floor, so he can clearly see me. He goes, "What are you doing here?" And I go, "I'm just here on like a little getaway with my wife. What's going on?" He said, "Oh, it's Jordan Love's wedding." So now I'm putting the wheels in motion. David Mulgeta, Micah Parsons' agent, was at Jordan Love's wedding. LaFleur was there. The whole darn near Packers team was there. So my question is, did I see the beginning of the makings of this whole thing coming together at Jordan Love's wedding at the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Niguel? Now my mind is like exploding as I'm figuring this out in real time.
You did it. You don't need to go to Reddit and find the conspiracy theorists who, by the way, we're right on about this trade. You've got Daniel Jeremiah months ahead in actual real life. That's
pretty bizarre.
Quality reporting, and not too different from how that Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, trade all happened when Sean McVay and Stafford, they just happened to be vacationing at the same hotel in Mexico. Oh man, that is awesome. I'm glad the time worked out for us to get this in before the holiday weekend and before you hear back from us in the 40s and free agent feed. So we're going to be playing a couple episodes Monday and Tuesday where we draft the most likely Super Bowl champions. And I think the Packers have to move up the list a little bit.
I got a value pick there.
Yeah, I think they're looking good. All right. Appreciate you, DJ. And yes, we'll be back in the feed in just a couple of days. Micah Parsons, I mean, with the Photoshop, he looks good in a Packers
bonus
uniform.
How about a bonus 40s and free agents? That America, good for you. You got a little bonus.